Before starting the class today, please join me in invoking Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Excuse me. What a beautiful morning it turned out to be. I say that now, as soon as we leave, it's going to be like 105,000 degrees. So, which ironically kind of fits with today's topic. Since we have bipolar weather, it's Texas. We'll be focusing on observing the body today, which is also bipolar. Fluctuates, it goes up and down, it changes, it moves. So as I mentioned last time, we're kind of going through the flows of different topics, different observations between the mind, the body, the breath. And last class, we focused mostly on the breath. And so today we're going to focus on observing the body and the sensations of the body and paying more attention to the posture, our movement, our stability, our comfortability, and kind of going through the motions of the body. So we'll focus on a few things today, mostly posture and sensations. And then the next class we'll focus on feelings and emotions and other stuff the body feels. But anyway, so last class we talked about posture and finding that perfect posture, right? Or not perfect posture, but finding a comfortable posture to sit in. And so today we're going to use that posture as our anchor, all right? So we're going to use the body as a whole as an anchor, as our object of meditation. And so the primary observation of mindfulness of the body is quite literally feeling its movements, feeling what it's feeling, what is it doing, right? What is it adjusting? What sensations is the body itself feeling as far as discomfort, as far as some aches and pains and some, just other stuff that the body would naturally feel as we're sitting for an hour. Because as we've kind of spoken about before, our mind is always wandering. It's wandering in the past, it's wandering in the future. But the body is always here, right? The body is always with you. And the breath is always happening in the present moment. And so we're going to use that as our anchor, as our stability for this object of meditation. And so as we kind of sit, especially when we're using the body as our object of meditation, we're gonna start noticing something that we typically overlook, that the body is constantly changing, right? It's one of those things where as we age, we don't really notice that we're aging, right? We can't really tell that we're aging because we see ourselves almost every day. So we don't notice, after a while we'll notice gray hairs and wrinkles and whatnot, but moment by moment, we don't typically notice these changes, right? Unless someone you haven't seen in a while notices changes in the body, right? But we typically don't notice those changes. But those are external changes that don't really matter, right? We don't really care how our hair is changing color or how our skin is looking. But in meditation, we're kind of bypassing the externality of the body and more focusing on the internal motions of the body. And so as we kind of sit and observe or pay attention to the body, right? We're also paying attention to the breath as well. And so I'm going to talk about a little bit more about the breath, but for the most case, our primary objective or our primary focus is just simply going to be on your posture and the sensations that your body's feeling, right? Since we kind of spoke extensively on breath last time, I won't go too much into it, but we will still use the breath as an area of focus as well. So if you do notice like changes in the breath, whether you're breathing more heavily, or if it's shorter, if it's lighter, if it's more coarse, if it's smooth, if the breath is changing, that's typically a sign that something is stirring up in the mind that's causing the breath to change, right? And we'll notice that also in longer sessions. So as you start to extend your meditations throughout your practice, and they become longer and longer, hopefully you'll notice as you start to be more stable in the mind, as your mind starts to become more stable and starts to become more concentrated, the breath will start to become more and more shallow, become more and more shorter, right? You'll get to a point, especially when you start to really becoming more stable, the mind becomes more stable. One of the signs that we're kind of in a good concentration stage is the lack of the sensation of breathing itself, right? Because a really strong, focused, concentrated mind, where your distractions are light, or they're little, or they're not taking over the mind, right? Where they're kind of just wispy and kind of in the background. One of the signs that your mind is pretty stable, or stable enough, is the sensation that we're almost not having breathing, because the breath becomes so shallow, becomes so slow, where the body doesn't really need too much air to breathe, right? Same thing when we're sleeping. When we're sleeping, our breath is the most light, it's the most shallow. So likewise, when we're in deep meditation, you'll start to breathe, you're breathing, but you'll start to feel like as if you're not breathing, right? And so typically the most common reaction to that is the mind's like, oh crap, I'm not breathing. Let me go ahead and take a deep breath, right? You'll take a big sigh. But I want to encourage you to try to not do that, because that will actually kind of break your concentration in a way, right? Depending on your practice, depending on your level of meditation, it may not break your concentration, but most likely in most situations it does, right? Because it's a breakage from something that's typically uncommon to you, right? It's uncommon that the mind is stable enough where you feel like you're not even breathing, right? So not something that happens on a daily basis. And so when it does happen, especially when it first starts to happen for you, the mind kind of freaks out, right? It's like, oh crap, it's not breathing. I need to do its job for it, right? And so we typically take that deep breath. But try to use that, right? Shift your focus to that shallow breath. So instead of reacting to it and taking a deep breath, just use that as your object of meditation. Oh, my breath is shallow. And then continue on, right? That way, because it's the same thing, right? The mind wants you to acknowledge the shallow breath. And so instead of freaking out about it, just lightly be like, all right, I know you're breathing very shallow. Don't worry about it. It's okay, right? You really want to baby that breath. and kind of calming down like you would a child, right? It's okay, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. Right? So that's typically how you want to react to that. And it's honestly that's really the way you want to react to anything, whether it's anger, whether it's happiness or excitement or jealousy or any other kind of emotion or feeling. You want to kind of react to that in that same way. You really just want to baby it. You want to try to calm it down. Even excitation, even when you're really happy about it, really excited about something, or really hyper about something, that too can become a problem eventually, right? And so it too, you want to calm it down and be like, it's all right, don't get super excited, don't get super happy, because what is it overall? What is that scenario or that situation? Ultimately, what is it? Impermanent, right? And so since it's impermanent, there's really no reason to be overly attached to it, right? Attached to its happiness that's bringing you, or the excitement that's bringing you. But likewise, as we're sitting in meditation, we also have to remember that as well. That the sensations and the feelings that we're feeling in the body, the aches or the pains, those too are also impermanent, right? Anicca, impermanence. And so as we start to carefully observe the body as we're sitting in meditation, we recognize those aches and pains. One thing they used to always say is, suck it up, buttercup, right? Like, if your body's going to hurt, make it hurt, because we're not used to sitting, right? We're not a culture of sitting on the floor or sitting cross-legged. And so it's going to be a time where we have to start to train the body to do what we want it to do, right? In this case, it's sitting cross-legged and sitting still. And so the body is going to want to make adjustments and fix its aches and pains as much as it wants. I'm not saying to deny it completely, right? Because if it's overly painful or overly discomforting, okay, go ahead and make your adjustment, right? But be mindful of that you're making the adjustments in the body. But if it's just a little tingle that your feet or legs are feeling because they're falling asleep, or there's kind of that ache in the mid back because we're attempting to sit up straight the entire time, there's going to be those that are that will pass. Those are the ones you kind of want to tell yourself to suck it up, buttercup, right? The little minor feelings that are quite literally impermanent, right? They're going to pass. It just needs to run its cycle. But if you're feeling actual pain, right, or anything that's too prolonged, then of course, obviously, go ahead, make the mental notation of what you're going to do or what you're feeling first, right? And so if, let's say, you have to adjust your leg, if you're sitting in half lotus, for instance, and you're right, because in half lotus is just one foot on top of the other thigh. If you have to switch, right, make the mental note first that you're going to make the change, that you're going to make the switch, and then slowly make the switch, right? As you're switching, you can make the notation, mental note, switching or adjusting, or correcting, whatever you want to use, and then get into your position. But what we're attempting to do is we're essentially adding closed captioning to everything that the body is doing, everything that the body is feeling, everything that the breath is changing, everything that the mind eventually, as we go through the classes, is doing. You're really just adding closed captioning to everything. You're really just notating everything that the body is doing, everything that the mind is doing, everything that the breath is doing. That way we can start to notice how the body kind of quietly talks to us all the time, right? Because we typically ignore the body unless we're feeling pain, right? It's really the only time we start to churn back and take care of the body is when it's in pain, right? But at that point, the body's screaming and yelling at you. I'm in pain, fix me, help me, heal me, right? But the body's talking to us all the time, right? But we're not really listening because it's minor, right? We make adjustments, we make shifts, we have aches, we have a scratch, we have an itch, right? we're doing things for the body, and the body is speaking to us all the time, but we're not really paying attention to that. We're not really listening. And so as we sit in meditation, we're truly listening. So if there is an itch, we acknowledge there's an itch. If we have to scratch, we have to scratch. If we have to adjust, we make the adjustments, right? And so we're really listening deeply to our body and not just passively doing things by habit, scratching and itching and whatever you want to do. But this still goes back to the teaching of impermanence. This is really the big topic in this series of meditation classes is impermanence, the impermanence of our breath, the impermanence of our body, the impermanence of the changes of our breath and body and all that. And really focusing and paying attention to how it's impermanent, right? And as we start to see that a little bit more clearly, because we typically believe in things to be solid and fixed, right? But meditation, as we start to meditate, and in our meditation, right, we start to see something that is different, that is changing. And so every sensation, every movement, every shifting that we're doing, everything that appears and disappears and fades away, we notice that more clearly. We see that quickly versus waiting for some grand amputation to happen before we recognize we're missing a limb, right? So these little sudden changes, slight changes in the body, we really want to pay attention to. Because this observation doesn't require belief. We don't have to believe that the body changes. We see it. We see it directly through the experience of us being observant of it, right? And that's the key of our practice. And then we can take that off the cushion, right? Because we don't, even though as we sit and pay more attention and observe the body, and we start to listen to the body, right? We can do the same thing with our mind, listening to ourselves, talk to ourselves in the mind, right? Of what's happening. And so depending, regardless of your situation that you're in, whether you're driving or cooking or cleaning, you're arguing, you're talking, whatever it may be, we still want to be observant of the mind. We still want to see what the mind is going through, right? Maybe thinking, oh, I know what the mind is going through. Like I can hear my thoughts, right? I know what I'm thinking. But do you though? Do you really know what you're actually thinking? Do you really know what you're actually feeling? Do you really know what your reaction is doing? Typically no, right? Because we react out of habit mostly, out of this habitual automation that the mind does or responds to, according to how we've lived our lives, how we've grown up, wherever we've grown up, right? We're attempting to override an entire lifetime, essentially, right? Or trying to change this mind that has been conscious for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years, right? You're attempting to change it. That's going to take a lot of work, right? It's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of willpower, pretty much. But, I mean, think if you've ever been in therapy, right? Or taken a psychology class, we know that the mind can't just shift automatically from one craziness to another craziness, right? It can't just go from totally damaged to totally healed overnight, right? It's a progression of changes. It's a progression of activities that we need to progress through and correct and fix and heal through, right? And so our meditation is essentially the same thing, right? It's a progression, it's a progressive practice. You can't just sit one time or two times or a month or a year and pretend we're expert meditators or we're Zen masters. It doesn't work like that, right? I've been meditating for over 20 years. And still, my meditation is still flawed, right? It's not perfect. It's much better than it was 10 years ago. It's much better than it was a year ago, right? But it's still not perfect. And so and this is an unfortunate commonality with a lot of people, don't be discouraged by that. Because it's a progressive experience, and we don't typically see changes, right? Same way we don't see changes in ourselves every single day, we won't see those changes right away in our meditation either. And I tell people all the time, especially my students that have been with me for a while, and when we're talking about the practice, sometimes they'll come up from them that they don't know where they're at in their practice. They don't know if they're progressing. They don't know if they're doing it right. But I can sit here and tell them, oh, I see your progress. I've seen the changes, right? Because I'm not you. You're so hyper fixated on something or focused on this one grand change that you're not seeing the little changes that's being made. But someone outside of you can see those changes, right? You do see your children growing up as they age, right? You do see the changes, the progress that they've done in school or with their extracurricular activities or with their personal lives. You see those changes because you're an external person seeing inward, but they won't see those changes, right? They don't feel the sensation of aging, that eventually they'll become adults and leave and have their own lives. They don't see that right away, but the parents do, right? I'm assuming, and I'll have kids, thank goodness. But I'm assuming that's what you feel, right? Maybe. But as we start to progress and become more aware of our mind and how it works, and our body and how it works, and the breath and how it works, as we observe these calmly, right, we start to develop both that steadiness in our meditation and the wisdom that arises from recognizing those impermanent things or the changes that happens in the mind, body, and breath. And so that calm attention, right, starts to stabilize, starts to perfect, or at least contribute to the perfection of our samatha, of our concentration. And then as the mind starts stabilizing, we're able to see more clearly the vipassana part of our practice, right? The contemplation piece, the insight piece, where we see the impermanence in things. And that reveals the changes that naturally occur and the changes that we experience. You start to become more observant and more aware. As you become more observant and aware of how the body changes, especially let me give you an example. Think in meditation. If you're sitting in meditation and you're focusing on your object in meditation, in this example, let's use your breath, right? You're using the breath as your object in meditation. And so let's say you're counting, right? And so you're counting 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. And then a memory comes up, right? Let's say you just had an argument with your significant other or child or something last night. And that memory, that experience arises again, right? And it was a frustrating experience for you, right? It brought out anger and frustration. It was yelling, blah, 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 whatever, right? But as that memory starts to replay in your mind, if you're aware enough, then you'll start to notice the changes in the breath, right? The breath starts to become a little bit more deeper, it starts to become a little bit more coarse, right? Your body starts to tense up a little bit, maybe start to shift too much, right? Maybe if you continue on with like memory replaying in your head, then you'll also notice how potentially the body is becoming more heated, right? And you can literally feel your face becoming flush and the body tense up even more. And so if you're aware enough in your meditation, you'll notice these slight changes that we don't typically notice every day, right? In any everyday experience. We don't notice those changes in our breath and the changes in our body. But if we're mindful enough in our meditation, we see those happening. We notice the breath changing. We notice the body tensing or starting to kind of warm up a little bit. Then we can say, hey, something's happening here, right? There's a change in the breath. There's a change in body. Why? Where did this come from? And then hopefully it'll kind of snap you out of this replay of this argument, and you can use that as your object meditation and make a mental note of it and remind yourself of anicca and permanence and go back to your breath, your object of meditation. And you can use that same practice, that same exercise when you're not meditating. So if you're simply just talking to someone and you start to become frustrated or angry or whatever it may be, and you can, if you're mindful enough, you're aware enough in that moment, you'll also notice the changes in the breath. You'll also notice the changes in the body, right? Because what typically happens when someone's frustrating us, for instance, right? Or they're just talking too much or whatever it may be, we typically sigh, right? We take a deep breath, we're like, right? We're just like, oh my God, this person's so effing annoying, or whatever it may be. But those are also experiences that we don't really notice, typically, right? We're just kind of going with the flow. But it is a change. A sigh is a change in the breath. It is a change in the body. And those are things we want to notice as well. Because if you can notice them early on, then you can also notice early on what is happening in the mind, what the mind is thinking, what is the mind doing, how is the mind reacting to the situation. And you can put a stop to it sooner than later, right? Because again, everything starts as thoughts, right? Everything goes as a thought to speech to action. So if you notice the thought happening, especially if it's a negative thought or a negative reaction to something that's happening, you can stop it right then and there before that thought progresses to bigger thinking, right? You can start to think of how you want to cause a scene, or how you want to retaliate, or how do you want to yell back, or what, comeback you want to give, or whatever it may be, right? You can stop all that unwholesome negative thinking early on before it progresses to speech, right? And so if you can stop at the thought process first, that's your first checkpoint, right? That's your first checkpoint where there's policing you of your thoughts, right? Just like the police will ask you questions, where are you going, what are you doing? You also want to ask yourself, where are you going, what are you doing, right? Where are you going with this type of thinking? And if you can be aware of it and notice the negativity of it or the unwholesomeness of it, then you can put a stop to it right then and there before it progresses, right? So that's your first checkpoint. But if you, by chance, sped through that checkpoint, right, and avoided the police at the first checkpoint, now that those thoughts turn into speech, right? So now you haven't just thought of negative things or unwholesome things, but now you said that negative or unwholesome thing. But that speech, even though you've uttered the words, it's still a second checkpoint. You're still being policed at that point. Because even if you just open your mouth for one word to be spat out, you still have time to stop from continuing to talk for most of us, right? Or even if you've said the first few words, the first few sentences, you still have time to stop before you make it worse. Because we all know, the more you talk in a negative, heated situation, the more you say, the worse it gets, right? And so the less you say, the better it gets. And so it doesn't matter how long, all this kind of matter, but it doesn't matter how many words you've said, but as long as you've stopped yourself at one point, right? That's your second checkpoint. If you've still sped through that second checkpoint, the next thing that happens after a speech is action, right? So now you've thought negative things, now you've said negative things, now you're about to do a negative thing by hitting, by stealing, by killing, by whatever other action you would do, right? But that too also has time. Let's say you're let's say you've thought a negative thing. Let's say you're thinking of wanting to punch this person, and now you've said it. You're like, let's say if you don't shut up, I'm gonna punch you. And now you're about to start to punch, right? But even that motion of about to hit, or about to punch, or about to steal, about to whatever you're about to do, again, you still have time to stop making it worse, right? You've unfortunately, you're already going to jail, right, at this point, right? you sped through the first checkpoint, you sped through the second checkpoint, the third checkpoint, you're still going to jail, meaning you're going to accumulate negative karma, right, bad karma from this. But it's not as bad as if you fulfilled that entire action, right? It's only when you fulfill the entire action where it becomes really bad. But you're still going to accumulate negative consequences from it, right? But that's the beauty of why we practice mindfulness, of why we want to be really hyper aware of our thoughts, speech, and actions. Because the more you start to become aware of how those work, of how the mind reacts or works to things, how your speech reacts and works with things, how the actions reacts and works with things, the easier it is to see it happening in real time, right? Because now, as I'm just speaking it to you, and as you're listening, this is just a hypothetical, right? But it's not until you're in an actual situation where it becomes real. It's like, oh crap, this is real life now, right? And let me put my teachings into practice, or my readings into practice, or my practice into practice. Heck, that works too. Let me put my practice into practice. But yeah. So for today's sit, we're really just going to be aware of our body, our posture, and our breath as sensations arise and disappear. So you can use any object of meditation as you like. Name the techniques of breath you want to use. Yeah, let's just do that. So use your breath as the object of meditation for this session. And as things change, as your posture may start to adjust, or you start to slouch, or you feel those pains and aches, or the tinglings, or any other sensations you may feel. We're going to shift our object of meditation from the breath to whatever sensation we're feeling, right? And so if you do feel, for instance, that you're slouching and you need to readjust, right? You're going to shift your object of meditation to the posture and make those mental notations that your posture is unpostured and you're about to correct it, right? And so as you're doing it, again, we're making the mental notation as correcting or shifting or adjusting or whatever word you want to use until it's stable again, and then you go back to your object of meditation of the breath, right? And so we're kind of using multiple objects of meditation for the most part, but the breath is going to be the primary. And anything else that needs to change, whether it's your posture, whether it's an adjustment or a shift or a movement, whatever it is, you're going to kind of release the breath for a little bit to go to whatever you need to attend to, and then go back to the breath, and kind of going back and forth throughout the meditation. And you want to do this, by doing this, it kind of helps you also recollect that, also helps you recollect impermanence, right? The body truly is way more impermanent than I thought it was. We're using the word impermanent here in meaning changes, right? It's changing way more often than we really give it credit for, right? We make adjustments more than we feel like we do, right? The body aches more than we feel it, or it's feeling comfortable more than we feel it. Whether it's good or bad, those are the things you want to be noticing, because it helps you reflect on just how much the body does change without us really knowing it, right? Like I said before, the body's talking to you all the time. Yeah, it's whispering and we're not really paying attention too much, but it's still speaking. And so we really need to listen to it and really notice what it's saying. And so we're kind of making those shifts back and forth between the breath and the body. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts before we do our sitting.
When you do that, you're saying attachment, emotional attachment, to happiness.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying it's probably not the natural joy that's.
Yes. So over being too excited is not, I mean, it's okay, obviously, to be excited and happy about something. But oftentimes when we're unmindful, right, we attach too much emphasis, too much time on whatever it's making us excited or happy, right? And we tend to want to hold on to that excitation or to that excitement or happiness for as long as we possibly can, even when it's way overdue to start being boring or unexciting or whatever, right? But we attach too much to it. And by doing that, once it disappears, we start to feel the aftermath of it, pretty much, right? We start to think, oh, I want that feeling back. I want that feeling of being excited back. I want that feeling of being happy back. I want that feeling of whatever it gave you back. And then that causes attachment, right? That causes us to cling to those feelings and to those things that brought us that excitement or happiness without realizing the impermanence of it, right? And it's the non-realizing the impermanence of it is why we get attached to it. Because if you truly were realized enough to realize just how impermanent things are that are outside of yourself, we wouldn't give it as much credit as we do. right? We want to give it as much attention that we do versus just recognizing, oh, this brings me joy, or this brings me happiness, or I'm excited to do this, right? And being able to just do it and live it and have it without having to hold on to it and wanting it forever, right? Because that's typically what we do. Think of a relationship, right? Unfortunately, most people treat relationships as almost like property, right? You have to have them. They have to be with you all the time. You have to just always want them, blah, blah, blah. You know, the whole, think of, what is it called? Oh my goodness, what is that word? Honeymoon phase, right? Think of the honeymoon phase. We have a honeymoon phase for everything. Relationships, new cars, new houses, new phones, new anything, right? We always have that honeymoon phase of things, of new things. And we treat it as the most valuable thing ever, right? And I use the example of a new car all the time, right? The honeymoon phase of a new car is treating it like it's the most precious thing in the world, right? You want it always clean. You're picking up every little crumb that you see, and you're brushing off every little dust particle that you see, and you're doing this for quite some time. But eventually, you forget to do it. You start to just become lazy, and eventually, after a while, it looks like you live out of your car, right? So the honeymoon phase of having and treating this car with absolute attention has dissipated. It's gone, right? It's no longer there. But we do that with every single thing in our life, whether it's people, things, places. We do it all the time, right? It may not be as dramatic, but we still do it. And so it's the holding on to wanting things to be the same forever that causes us to suffer, right? But that's why we really need to realize impermanence. Is because if you can truly realize it, right? Realize impermanence, then whatever happens, yeah, this is a brand new car, I love it, I treat it great, but I know it won't be like this forever. This new relationship is great, it's fun, it's exciting, but it won't be like this forever, right? Your new phone is nice and shiny and clean and new, no cracks, no breaks, but it won't be like that forever, right? And so realizing that, recognizing that, makes it so much easier as time progresses and as it changes and it breaks and it loses or whatever it may be. Because whenever those negative things happen in a good thing, it doesn't affect you as hard. It doesn't affect you as deeply. Because it's impermanent. I know this was going to break. I know that this was going to get lost. I know that this is going to get ugly or old or wrinkly or whatever it may be, right? Knowing that helps you overcome the natural kind of negative stages that it gives you, right? And so realizing that and recognizing that makes you a little bit more aware that there's no reason to be overly attached to this exciting thing, overly happy about this exciting thing. You can still be happy and excited about it, but you know that there's no clinging involved. You know that there's no attachment involved, right? That's kind of the key takeaway. Be excited, be happy, want things, get things, do things, but just don't attach to them. Don't try to cling to them. Don't try to hold on to them forever, thinking that if you hold on tightly enough, it's never going to change. Don't think that. That's what causes us to suffer. It's that holding on to things and not wanting them to change. That's the bad guy here. So if you know that, there's no reason for you to ever suffer. Right? Yeah. Yep. Any emotion. Um,
Was that something more internal that you were figured out some kind of insight, and you get
well, that's different, right? That's a little bit different. That's what we would call piti. No, sorry, sukha, right? Sukha is the opposite of dukkha. Dukkha is suffering. Sukha is happiness or bliss. It's one of the 5 jhana factors. It's the 4th one, right? Because there's in the 5 jhana factors, there's initial concentration, there's the stable concentration, there's piti or joy. This is the joy that we feel in our body. Because as we start to go deeper and deeper in meditation, our concentration starts to be more focused and more concentrated, then we start to develop I can't think of the word now, but it's a sensation of joy that's in the body, right? Sometimes dependent, and it could be dependent on what you're meditating on. So a lot of times, for instance, those that meditate or do metta meditation, loving kindness meditation, they often feel the sensation of joy kind of in their chest area or in their head, right? Where it just feels really good. There's sometimes with maybe a tingling or kind of a I haven't had coffee today, so this is why I can't literally think of anything. Vibration kind of in the body, right? And so these are signs of piti. And then after this piti really starts to heighten, right? It becomes a little bit overwhelming for a lot of people, right? It can potentially turn into restlessness, right? Where there's too much energy and we need to start to release it. But anyway, after that comes sukha or bliss, right? And now that sensation shifts from the body to the mind. This is typically where those realizations happen, right? And so when you have a realization or you have kind of an aha moment or you figured something out, right? The mind is flaring up, right? And so that's a different kind of joy than a joy you would from a new car, a new phone, or whatever it may be, right? This is a spiritual joy that can't be bought. So it's a little different, right? But the main difference is still impermanence, right? Because when you develop wisdom cannot disappear, right? Wisdom is gained or realized, and so it's permanent in a kind of spiritual sense for the most part. But that's kind of what you could ask yourself to determine if it's a true kind of joy or a false joy. Is it impermanent? Good question, though. Any other questions? No. No. That would be wanting, right? Be clinging to an idea of perfection. No, I don't think there's such thing as until we're fully enlightened, there's no such thing as a perfect meditation. I guess my idea of perfect would be a mind completely void of thoughts. I guess, right? I could be dead for all I want. That'd be nice. But no, void of thoughts. Void of thought could mean two things actually. It can mean it's in its direct way of having no thoughts whatsoever, right? You're able to sit in meditation, everything's just blank and void, right? There's nothing. No thoughts arise, no sensations, no emotions, no nothing. The other meaning is that these thoughts aren't strong enough to take over your object of meditation, right? Like I said earlier, they're kind of just wispy and in the background. Because if you're using your object of meditation here in your foreground, and it's the primary thing that you're focusing on, you can have thoughts that come and try to push out of its way, right? Like, no, I want to be the primary object here, right? But as long as you never allow it to become and as long as you never allow these thoughts or these distractions to take over, the mind is still void, right? Because you're not switching it, right? You're not allowing a story to take over. You're not allowing the mind to create a movie of whatever distraction arose, right? But in actuality, this is how a perfect meditation is never allowing the distractions to take over, right? That's still, in a way, that's still samatha, that's still concentration meditation. It's never allowing the distractions to take over. They're still there, right? They come and go, but they're not strong enough to ever take over. That's still kind of a perfect meditation, right? Yeah. And if you can do that for at least 30 minutes, you're, what do they say? You're Gucci. You're good to go. That's at that point we can say, if you're able to maintain that type of meditation for 30 minutes, then we can say that we're in access concentration, right? And this is the kind of mindset. This is where the 5 jhana factors I mentioned earlier have been attained, right? Again, there's initial concentration, applied concentration, there's joy, piti, bliss, sukha, and one pointed concentration, ekagata, or samadhi, sorry. And these are all progressive, right? So you still have to have the initial concentration, which is applying our object of meditation, right, our breath. Then there's applied concentration, is being able to be stable and only fixated on the breath as object of meditation. Then naturally joy in the body comes, right? Sometimes it's a sensation in the body. For me, it's almost always in my hands, right? And this starts to feel, again, there's maybe a vibration, it could be a tingling, but wherever it occurs, it spreads out, and then you start to feel like your body starts to kind of fade away almost, right? You lose sensation of your hands, you lose sensation of the pressure of sitting, you lose the sensation that basically feels like you're floating, right, or levitating. And then that switches to the 4th jhana factor of sukha, right, of bliss. And this is where the mind is really stable. It feels joyous. It feels free. It feels open and serene and calm, right? Again, this is where the distractions are not able to take over. And doing it long enough gives you the 5th jhana factor of one pointedness concentration. Like your entire sit was able to focus on that one object of meditation. And if you're able to achieve that, then you're in a stage of that we call axis concentration. This is perfect meditation. This is really where we want to be. Axis concentration is really where you want to be. There are higher levels of jhanas, right? There's 8 levels of jhanas. These are higher, deep stages of consciousness, which is unimportant, to be quite honest. They don't give us anything. They're just stages to help us perfect concentration, but they will never allow you to gain any true insight, which is why I will almost never speak about it, because it's a nice to have, not a need to have, right? You need insight. I'd rather you gain insight, true insight, than perfecting these jhana stages that don't do you much. Only thing it allows you to do is be able to sit for hours and hours in one session. But if you're just sitting for 3 hours thinking of nothing, what's the point? It's stupid. Don't be stupid. Mm-hmm. The void of thoughts, of having zero thoughts whatsoever, would be those higher stages of consciousness of the jhanas. Because it's the sixth, there's 8 levels of jhana, stages of jhana. The 6th level is, it's literally called void, where your object of meditation is literally on the void. So if you close your eyes and you see nothing, that's your object of meditation, right? And there's nothing that can distract you. It's at this stage where you can be in the midst of a war zone, and you wouldn't be hindered.
In those states, nothing comes to you that's beyond you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't help at all, to be quite honest. It is, and a lot of practitioners obsess over it. And a lot of people also mistake it for enlightenment as well. Because they're like, oh shit, I'm not thinking about anything. Nothing's happening in the mind. This must be it. It's not it, right? It's a big problem. That's why it's extremely difficult to ever find someone that would teach those stages, right? I had to search high and low. I literally had to go to Thailand to learn how to practice jhana meditation. This was after I undergrad. So this was the summer of 2012, before I started grad school, is when I spent 3 months in Thailand. And it was only 2 weeks before the end of that retreat that I attained the first level of jhana. So literally it took me over 2.5 months just to get it. And once I got it, I'm like, all right, cool, this is cool, right? And you progress. I didn't finish all of the levels because I have time, but once I got back and progressed, even now I can't get to all 8. Like, I'm stuck at 6. I can't get past that. And in actuality, I don't really need to. Because after that, it's there's no reason to. I don't gain any insight. You don't gain anything that's going to bring you closer to enlightenment. You literally just gain the ability to be able to sit for 3 hours and not move. That's all I got out of it.
So in those states, I guess you're out of it and bring contemplation in to think about it in that state, or is that not in that state?
Correct. As soon as you make that desire to start to contemplate, you're out of jhana. It's a whole different country. Yeah, it is very peaceful.
When you come out of it, you feel more objective though about things in life that happen. Like you're more out of yourself to look at a situation. So it doesn't even do that later in your daily life.
It actually makes me angrier, to be quite honest. Because I'm like, oh, people are so stupid. Like, it just makes me not want to be around people, right? Because you go from a state of complete calmness and emptiness, right? And you don't have to deal with any stupidity of the world into the stupidity of the world, right? Like, nobody wants that. But to your point, I do use those stages to shift to contemplation. Because when we start to practice contemplation, we have to get in a stage of concentration first, right? You have to be in a stage of being able to calm and steady the mind and get it moving slow enough for you to truly be able to practice contemplation, right? And so for me, I use that as the shift from one type to another. The same way when we sit, right? I don't remember the last time we spoke on contemplation meditation. I think it's been a year or so. But to really contemplate on anything or use contemplation as your object of meditation, it takes probably, if you're objectively good enough, right? It may take you 10 to 15 minutes just to calm the body and mind and for you to be able to contemplate on something. And so this is why I kind of emphasize the access concentration mindset. It's because it's more beneficial. You'll gain more true insight by getting to access concentration first and then switching to something to contemplate on, right? Because once you access concentration, your mind is stable as heck, right? And it is quite literally the perfect stage to be in, whether it's just to sit in that stage for the entire session or to shift to contemplation. But access concentration is kind of the goal or the destination to be. So that's what I do. And for me, it takes about, I can't do it in our short sessions, right? Because I only do it in our morning session because that's the only time we sit for an hour and a half when we do our morning chanting. But it takes me probably 10 to 15 minutes to get to access concentration at this point. Sometimes even shorter than that, just depending on my mood. But generally speaking, 10 to 15 minutes is a good time frame for me to get into access concentration. And then I can either go into jhana if I want to, or start to contemplate. For me, at least in my practice, I do only concentration in the mornings and then contemplations in the evening. Because concentration, although I say I'm stuck at a level, and I don't really necessarily care to progress in a way, but sometimes I try. And when I was in Thailand, the minimum session to sit for meditation is 3 hours. And it takes about 3 hours just to get to level 1 of jhana for most people, especially if you're new, trying to learn. 3 hours is a minimum, which is why I can never teach it to you. because nobody's going to want to sit here for 3 hours. In meditation, you can sit here and listen to me to talk for 3 hours, but nobody wants to sit for 3 hours. It's very difficult. It's not easy. But I do practice 3+ hours of meditation at least once a month. Otherwise, I'm going to lose it. And I don't really want to lose it. All right. All right, well, we have a shorter sit now, but that's all right. Any last minute questions? We'll have questions when we get out, but again, we're just focusing on posture and breath and the sensations of the body makes. Do you have a question? Oh, the Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Do I have it written down somewhere? It's in the chat book. I can show it to you. Yeah, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. It's just the invocation of Shakyamuni Buddha. So Namo, N-A-M-O, means homage to, and Shakyamuni is Shakyamuni's name. And then Buddha, of course, just the title. So it's just paying homage to the Buddha Shakyamuni. This is translation of Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay. We'll go ahead and do our sits. We'll do a quick stretch if you need to. Welcome back. If you went anywhere. Okay, well, that was a very long sit, but hopefully you got something out of it, nonetheless. What did you get out of it, if anything? Notices. Did you notice what impermanence, body features did you notice? Or any impermanence, any changes? What have you noticed that you haven't noticed before? Or not really gave too much attention to before? Something that your body may have been doing that it's always done, but you never really paid attention to it. Like, oh yeah, I know body does this. I never really paid attention to it. It's something. Good. Yeah, the adjustments to your posture and body will probably be the most noticeable, of course. Anything you make mental notations of will be the most noticeable. Because, for instance, me just making the adjustments, I did that habitually. Like, I didn't even think about it. Shame on me. But it's literally everything else we do, right? Like I said before, every itch that you have, every scratch that you have, every twitch or sensation or whatever that we do it habitually, right? It's kind of automated, and it's only through meditation or through mindfulness that we are aware of those little kinks and habits that the body does, like the scratching, or alleviating an itch, or adjusting our posture. Especially making adjustments to posture is probably the most noticeable change, change that the body would do in meditation, right? It's the biggest ache that the body may have, especially if we're slouching, or if there's pain or discomfort in the back or your legs or your knee. Those are very noticeable, right? So those are the big changes that we can see. Those are the big adjustments that we can see. It's the little ones that we also need to and want to pay attention to, right? Because then everything works on a macro level in our life, especially in our body. Everything is the little things that we make, right? The adjustment I just made. That's something that we don't notice, but we do, right? Every eye twitch, every head scratch, every cough, every sneeze, every anything, right? Those are the little things we want to pay attention to. In and out of meditation. And it helps us by doing that, because it helps us recognize and realize just how much change is actually happening in real time. And how impermanent everything is, meaning it comes and goes, it rises and falls, right? It appears and it disappears. Nothing is forever lasting. Nothing will always be there. That itch, that scratch, that pain, that discomfort, that ache, all those things will eventually disappear in some way, shape, or form. And that's the kind of impermanence that we want to recognize and realize. Any other last minute questions? All right, then. And then a friendly reminder, tomorrow we will have a special ceremony from Stephanie. She will be taking her 3 refuge and 5 precepts. So if you're able to join us for that very auspicious occasion, please do. It'll be in lieu of our 12:30 service. And then next Friday, we'll start with the Sutra study class again. So it's every first and third Friday at 6:30 p.m. We will continue, or I will continue, on the Sutra of the Amitabha Sutra, that we already started last year and went through just the first paragraph in, what was it, like 6-7 months. So we'll be continuing on that, starting on this coming Friday, the 3rd at 6:30 p.m. And then we will not have service on Easter Sunday, so that's the 5th. So we will not have service for that day. So use that time to meditate on your own, or chant, or sit for 3 hours if you can. Give yourself a challenge. So Sutra study class starting again every first and third Friday at 6:30 p.m. Meditation will still continue every second and fourth Saturday at 10. No service on Easter Sunday. And then we'll have another retreat, full day retreat in June. I'm not exactly sure of the date just yet. It'll either be the first or the second Saturday. This will be a full day retreat, so it's from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So just keep an eye out on that. Okay, that's all I got for today. Anything else? Going once? Yes. Go for it. Go for it. Go ahead. We get at least 100 students a year doing the exact. So we get like at least 100 students a year doing the same thing. Yeah. How is mental health viewed?
Mental health services.
Do it. I'm all for medicating and meditating. As far as mental health is concerned, there are a lot of things mental health wise that I believe meditation can help with. Maybe not fix entirely, but there are a lot of mental health issues that, like anxiety, for instance. Anxiety, if we read the studies about anxiety, it'll tell you that the way anxiety happens is from one's own. It's three things. It's fear. Oh man, I forgot. I just read this paper recently too. It's fear, something about worrying about the future, and something else, some other third thing, right? But it's all obviously mind created, but it's something that that the person feeds into, right? They feed into their anxiety. And so it's something that can be controlled without medication, for instance, right? Unlike other mental problems like schizophrenia or severe depression or other types of mental health stuff, those that may need medication, but also meditation, right? And there are a plethora of studies about how meditation helps with mental health, right? And the lessening of anxiety and minor depression and whatnot. So I think it's important not to emphasize too much on one or the other, right? Because unfortunately I've heard from monastics, right, from people from monks and nuns, who are like, no, don't use any medication. Meditation can fix everything. Like, no, that's really unhelpful and dangerous almost, right? Because sometimes you need the medication. But it's viewed in a holistic way. It's viewed in a form that if it's going to be helpful without being abused, right? Because people can abuse the medication they get, depending on the type of mental issue they have. So there's a balance in knowing what's going to be enough from both ends of both the professional and the spiritual. I'm all for medicating. Do it. And meditation and medication. Repeat the question. What are some unique perspectives on, I guess, let me actually ask another one. Okay. How would people, I guess, see you if you were to seek counseling? How would people see me if I were to seek counseling? Hopefully as a human being. I'm not special. I've been to counseling as a monk. I've been to therapy as a monk. Flawed and broken just as much as anybody else is. But I do also see where it may be seen as you should already know what to do and help yourself kind of a perspective. But I think that's more on whomever is saying that versus me, right? Because again, I'm human. I'm imperfect, same way as anybody else is. I deserve help just as much as anybody else does. Yeah, I may be in a position where I should know what to do, but I don't, so obviously I have to seek help. That's what help is for, right? That's why everyone's here. You're here. I'm hoping to hear my wisdom on meditation because I know something. But if I don't know anything, then I don't go to my teacher or go to another teacher, right? So I don't think it's. I hope people don't feel it's a bad thing. I don't. I need therapy right now. Actually, the world is depressing. But I'm not going to hold it against. I hope no one would hold it against me, nor I them. It's a good question. I have an undergrad in communication, and I have two grads. Sorry, I have two undergrad degrees in communication and public relations. I have and I have two graduate degrees in also communication and psychology. I was a busy bee, but I regret going to grad school. Just FYI. Yeah, mostly because I went to a private grad school instead of a state school, so it just cost me my life. I should have made better decisions. But I also wanted to get out of Texas. So I went to Denver. I went to the University of Denver for grad school. So I think I was just too obsessed with wanting to leave Texas. So I went there. Out of the three grad schools, I got into two. I didn't get to my first choice, unfortunately. But I got into my other one. It was either University of Denver or Purdue University. I think that one's in New Jersey or something. I'm like, who wants to go to New Jersey? So I went to Denver. Yeah. Now I'm back in Texas. 2014. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started grad school in 2012. Fall of 2012. Ugh, that was such a long time ago. Holy crap. So old.